Uncle Dalphus grew up on the farm in a place called Green Sea, South Carolina, a little bitty town. I don't even know if they have a stop sign yet. He grew up on that farm, and he hardly ever left. Though when he was a young man, he did get drafted into the Army, and he was sent over to France during World War II. He was over there just a few days when a bomb went off right next to him and blew out his left eyeball. Well, of course, he couldn't stay over there that way, and so they sent him back to the States with a nice patch for his eye and everything. And he was back in the country for a few weeks when he got a letter there to Green Sea saying as how he was an injured war veteran. He could come to the VA hospital and get him a glass eyeball. Well, my Uncle Dalphus thought that'd be kind of nice, so a couple days later, he loaded up a pickup truck, and he headed over there to the VA office. Well, he walked in the door with that patch over his eye, and the man looked at him and said, "I got just the thing for you." He reached behind the counter and picked up this cardboard box, turned it upside down, and all these glass eyeballs come rolling all over the table. For you see, the government was into recycling back then, just like now, and of course there's just really, quite frankly, not very many glass eyeball factories around. And what they would do is they would give one out. When the person who got it didn't, shall we say, need it anymore, they would take it back, wash it off, put it in the box, and wait for the next person to come along. And that next person was my Uncle Dalphus. Now, I have to explain a little bit about the physical characteristics of my Uncle Dalphus. He was 6'6" and weighed 340 pounds. He was, to say the least, a big man. You see, besides raising tobacco, he also raised hogs on the farm, which he liked to eat. And being as how he was a very good eater, he was very big and very strong. In fact, the strongest man I've ever seen. I can remember watching him wrap them big old arms around a 300-pound hog and lift it up like it weighed nothing. Well, his size did present a problem in finding an eyeball that would fit. But after much looking, they did find one that looked like it'd be about the right size. There was one little problem, though. This one was blue, and his other one was brown. But my Uncle Dalphus, being the great philosopher that he was, simply said, "Well, can't see out of it anyway. Don't make no difference." So he just took and he put it right in there, and he kind of liked it. He was rather proud of it. A few days later, he was sitting at home, and my Aunt Blanche was in the kitchen cooking. Now, my Aunt Blanche was an incredible cook. She could fix anything and make it taste good, and her specialty was beef stew. And she made a good one. That old smell from that beef stew, that big old pot, because they did make a bunch, because Uncle Dalphus liked to eat now, and that smell come out of that kitchen, and it just come around the corner and kind of slid underneath the door, come over and grab him by the nose and just kind of pulled him into the kitchen. He was standing there watching, boy, she cutting up them potatoes and carrots and tomatoes, and he just, and that eyeball went right in the pot. Well, they dug around, and they pulled up carrots, and they pulled up potatoes, and they pulled up tomatoes, and they pulled up everything but that eyeball. He had to go without it for 3 days till they ate that pot down to the bottom, and there it was, just kind of staring up at him at the bottom. Kind of orange looking now. But just remember, can't see out of it anyway, don't make no difference. So he just stuck that thing back in there, and he was rather proud of it. Well, for Uncle Dalphus's 65th birthday, his kids decided to take him to the fair. He'd never been to the fair in his whole life. And when he pulled up in front there, it was quite a sight to see. He walked into the midway, and the first thing he saw was the roller coasters. "I won't ride that." Daddy, that's kind of a scary ride. Let me tell you that. I mean, that's not just the kind of ride anybody would want to ride. I mean, if you never... I'm scared enough. Well, that was true. So they got in the roller coaster. Now, normally in the roller coaster, 2 people sit side by side, but being as how my Uncle Dalphus is kind of like 2 people rolled in one, he sat in a seat by himself. And being as how big as he was, when they tried to pull that bar down, it didn't quite come all the way. But that roller coaster started out, and you know how they are, kind of slow, and then they come down the hill and start click, 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 click. They get higher and higher. My Uncle Dalphus began to get just a wee bit worried. I mean, now he was noticing them birds was flying underneath that thing now. His son put his hand on his shoulder and said, "Dad, I told you this were..." At just about that time, the roller coaster got to the top of that big old hill and just kind of stopped. Well, Uncle Dalphus thought the ride was over. Oh, that wasn't so bad. Down that thing hit the first one. It was doing real good. Come to the first loop-de-loop and just flip right around that thing. Now the second one, it went a little bit slower. And when it got right about up in the middle, Uncle Dalphus leaned forward. That bar come up. He come flipping right underneath that thing and landed head first on top of the two people in front of him. Now you can imagine the surprise when that roller coaster come to a stop and there was that big old fella just kind of stuffed down there and them feet waving in the air, and underneath you could hear this voice, "Please get us out of here!" Well, it took 2 minutes, about 5 minutes, yank him out of that thing. He popped out. He kind of staggered around, grabbed his head, said, "That was fun. Let's do that again." "No, Dad, let's do something else." Well, they went over to the midway there where they had all the games and all the prizes that could be won. And my Uncle Dalphus was a very, very good shot back when he had 2 eyeballs. He always shot with his left eyeball. And it weren't there no more, remember? There was a glass one in the place of it. And there was a prize to be won, 6-foot-long, pink, fuzzy alligator. And he thought that looked so good hanging over his fireplace. Now, they had a target. And the target were pretty good, but the bullseye was very small, right in the middle. And you had to shoot right through the middle of that there thing, hit that bullseye, and light up that light, and you could win that prize. Well, he took shot after shot, and he went all around that thing, and weren't never going to hit it. Well, he was beginning to feel kind of bad about it, and his son said, Dad, listen, let's go do something else for a while, and maybe we come back and you can win this here thing. My Uncle Dalphus was a proud man, and he hated to admit that he couldn't hit the target. But he went on with his son, and they went over to ride the bumper cars. Now, Uncle Dalphus had never ridden the bumper cars before, and they were shut off, and they was loading people in it. So he went out there, and he kind of wedged himself down in that thing. You know, his chin was up there right underneath the steering wheel, and his knees was kind of up underneath his chin, and he could barely get down in that thing. And he'd gotten there just a minute too late to hear the man explain about that little button that you push down there to make the cars go. So when they turned on the machine and all the cars took off, there was Uncle Dalphus just sitting in the middle of the track. And what a target. All 340 pounds sitting in that car. And they come around, those guys come around that corner and boom, run right into him. And boom, run right in. And boom, run. Uncle Dalphus, he didn't know what was going on. He thought these here people, the craziest drivers he'd ever seen. They can't even drive around this track without running into me. Well, here come a car, headed right straight for him. My Uncle Dalphus had enough. He reached out, grabbed the front of that car, and whoop, threw it right across the track on us. That thing just sort of bounced on the other side. The man come out and explained how he couldn't do that, showed him where the button was, and Uncle Dalphus started going. Now, when that car got to moving, it was a formidable weapon. All 340 pounds in that car coming around that track, and he had blood in his eyes. He started hitting them people. Boom! He'd hit them. They'd off the car. They'd hit the other side of the track. It looked like a pinball machine, just boing, 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 bouncing all over the place. 2 fellas decided to get even with him. He come around the track, and one got on each side of him, and they just kind of got him wedged in the middle there, and he could turn his wheel one way or the other way. It didn't make no difference. That car just kept on going straight, and they run him right smack dab, bam, into the wall. He hit that wall. He come flying up in that car. Boom, his head jerked forward. That eyeball shot out. Went right across the track, went over and went right through the bullseye and hit that target, and ping, that light lit up. And Uncle Dalphus got out. He walked over there. There was that man. He was still standing there scratching his head, trying to figure out how in the world that light went off, how somebody hit the bullseye when there weren't even nobody standing over there shooting. And Uncle Dalphus walked right up to him and said, I'd like that pink alligator and my eyeball, please. Well, the man looked way up at Uncle Dalphus and looked down on the floor, and sure enough, there was that eyeball, kind of blue and orange, just staring up at him. Had a big chip in it now, but remember, can't see over it anyway. Don't make no difference. And Uncle Dalphus picked it up. He put it in, and the man gave him that pink alligator. He took it home. He nailed it up over the fireplace. Whenever neighbors would come in, he'd tell them about how he'd been down in the Okefenokee Swamp, all alone in a canoe, and that alligator attacked. And it was a terrible fight. But finally, he beat him to death with a paddle, and the most rarest alligator in the world. There wouldn't anybody really believe that story. But then again, ain't too many people argue with my Uncle Dalphus, if you get my meaning.